Hello, welcome back to Tom's Garage. Today's going to be part two of the KC overhead light bar mounts that we filmed the pre-install video the other day. So you can see I've got some ditch lights and a ditch light bracket up here. But first thing I'm going to do is get rid of this little antenna. Get that out of the way. And then with my Torx 40, here are these two bolts. So these long bolts are going to go right back in where they came from, so you need to save these. Now we can take off cowling side bolts here. What I was saying yesterday about this button on the hinge here, this is going to come off and this bracket is going to go on behind there. But if you get in here and you look, you're going to see that bolt is a tiny bit below the cowling. So there's no way, especially when that bracket is on, that you're going to get a Torx in there without scratching up the pin. Like I mentioned yesterday, I got the Torx Allen type key, which will fit in there at a right angle. But if you could see, it doesn't really fit in there properly. So what we're going to do is cover up the paint with some blue tape. Now, this just pops out pretty easily. We're going to cover this up so we don't scratch up the paint when we go to put that bolt back in. So in the meantime, we can loosen this up. Need to loosen it up enough for this bracket to fit in there, like so. So that's all we need to do. Now, okay. So the only reason we took this off was so we can get our wires down in here and into the engine bay. So let's pause for a second and I'll get the light bar. So you can see there is a bunch of wire. There's got to be well over 6 feet of wire. And all I really need is that much. So I don't know if I want to cut this and put the connector back on or what. But for now, we're just going to put this out of the way. All right, so I went ahead and opened up the hood. Now, like I said before, there's just an awful lot of wire on here. And for now, we are just going to run this wire up into the engine bay. We can go ahead and put this cowling back on. And we've got the tape on here to hopefully protect the paint. And this just slides in. There's a little tab here. Actually, I think I want to get it on this side of the bolts. The bolts are going to come down through here, so I think I want to keep the wire there. And this is going to have to go in behind the hinge here. Come on. There we go. Okay, so there's plenty of slack in there. All right, we can go ahead and put the top long bolts back in. These are the long guys. We're not doing anything with this installation. Torx 40. Yeah, just snug. Not really holding anything down. So the trick here is going to be this. So we need to be able to push down on this cowling enough. I don't know if you could see this, to get this wrench in here like that. So I'm going to try to get a picture of another non-Mojave to put in the video so you can see just what I'm talking about here, about how low that sits below the bodywork. So, all right. So we've got our pre-assembled bracket set up, and I'm going to clip that onto the hinge bracket. And if you recall, we have the replacement bolts that are going to go in here. So what I'm interested to see is how this wire actually fits in here. So let me take it out for a second and see. So it's just a touch to see where it wants to be. Okay, that's where it wants to sit. And so there's really no room for that wire back behind that bracket. So there's really no room for that wire back behind that bracket. That's our first snafu here. So this is going to get locked down there pretty tight. So I'm going to go ahead and put the other bracket on, put the light bar on just to see how tight it pulls it in. And then we'll come back here and see what we're going to do with the wire. So give me a minute and I'll be right back. Okay, it's been about an hour, believe it or not, since I took a break. Got the other side on, and it's not the easiest thing to do. I'm going to show you through several trials and error. I found out a way to get that button tightened back up without messing up the paint on the body. So shame on KC for not really thinking this out. They could not have installed this on a Mojave. There's just no way that they would have done what they did and not at least called it out in the instructions. The driver's side's tightened up. Passenger side, I still left some slack in it, but that's as tight as it's going to go. And that measures 52.5 inches between those ears. And of course, the light bar is 50 inches. So I'm off to the hardware store to get 2 longer bolts and 2 1-inch spacers, because that's what's going to be needed. All right, first side looks good. So what I came up with is a plastic key card, credit card. I'm going to slide that to protect the paint. And I've just got a piece of wood. I'm going to push down so you can see you really can't get in there this way. You've gotta come in, and it's a tight fit. Like I said, shame on you, KC. This is really a crappy setup. Maybe we can get that button a little bit hand tight. There we go. There's one. Getting moving on this bracket. So, yeah. Really crappy setup. Okay, so now I'm gonna hold that bracket, get that bracket in there tight. Yeah, what kind of engineers they have over at KC. Might be the kind that drive a train. So if you don't have a Mojave, it's not going to be a problem because that button is probably a good inch higher. So tore it up a little bit. So I saved the paint on the plastic, but definitely not a good setup. So let's back this back out. Tighten up the rest of these bolts here. So that kind of found its center. I'm gonna go. That was one here. So that one. That one too. And third. All right. So that's the brackets. Got to get the ditch lights on. We've got to get the light bar centered and locked in where we want it, and figure out how this wire. And I have a feeling it's just gonna stay. Again. Yeah, we'll have to massage that in somehow, but there's really no other way to do it. Just got to work it in. So we'll tuck in there, I think, pretty good. We'll get the ditch lights back on. Okay, so to wrap it up, didn't go quite as smooth as I had hoped. Couple issues. The button cap screw, I really had to wrestle with that in order to try not to scratch up the paint. I said it numerous times through the video. I think it's a bad design. There's no way that the people at KC actually installed one of these on the Mojave. If they did, they would have pointed it out in the instructions. Not to say the instructions are helpful anyway. They're actually pretty poor. So I'm really surprised at KC for, really, I don't know, dropping the ball on this one. It's just not good. So, but we got through it. We made it work. Two sets of hands, two pairs of hands is definitely going to be an advantage to really hold down on that cowling while the other person can get in there with the Torx 50. So you need a Torx 50. You're going to have to go out and buy one of these because you can't get in there with the long Torx. You need to come in on an angle because this part of the bracket is in the way for you to come in straight. So that was snafu really number one. Snafu 2 was the fact that this is a 50-inch light bar, and from here to here measures 52.5. They don't call that out in the instructions, so you're on your own. The brackets that come with the rough country light are really more designed for a roof rack type application. There's two sets of angle type brackets that don't work in this situation. All you have here is just a bolt going straight through. So we had to run out to the hardware store, get some washers and some longer bolts, and those were M8s by 125 thread, and they're 45 millimeters long, and I've got a 1-inch spacer. So you'll need that if you're doing a similar setup on a Mojave, or probably any Jeep for that matter, because I'm assuming the width is the same. Problem we ran into here was with the taller Mojave and 392 hood. So this would have went smoother on anything other than those two trucks with the lower hood. I'm going to try to get a picture of maybe a Rubicon on that button just to show you how much how much height difference there is. I think on the Mojave or on the Rubicon or any of the other ones, you can probably still go straight in, even clearing this bracket. So just a challenge with the Mojave because of the higher hood, but we got through it. Not, you know, I'm not going to say it was, you know, a terrible product that I'm going to return. It worked. We got through it, and that's part of, you know, when you're working on your own truck, is to overcome obstacles and figure out how to make things work. So we were able to, I don't know if you can see it or not, maybe I'll swing the camera over a little bit. The wire is tucked in pretty good there. Kind of looks like weather stripping, so that's not a problem. The challenge is going to be the wiring under the hood, because there's just a ton of wire back there. So we'll get through that on the next video on the electrical part. So appreciate you tuning in and staying with me through the end, and like and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next video. Thank you.